Thank you to the Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona for inviting me to be a part of your Ray of Hope series. The Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona provides such great support and resources to survivors, caretakers, and professionals, and I'm honored to be a part of this series. Today we're going to be talking about stress management and self-care during COVID-19, which I know is a difficult situation for all of us, especially caretakers. My name is Joyce Marter, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist with over 20 years experience. I'm adjunct faculty at Northwestern University, and I'm the past chair of the Midwest region of the American Counseling Association. I love the work that I do. I find it so meaningful and rewarding, and it's my intention to be a support and a resource to you during this challenging time. I have a text campaign for you so that you can receive some handouts of these slides, as well as handouts of some of the innovative tools that I've developed for you, such as a self-love wheel and a support wheel. You can have access to these and other resources by pulling out your phone and texting the word KEYS, K-E-Y-S, to the number 33777. I'll show you that number a couple more times throughout the presentation. You could also just write it down on a piece of paper and do it later. But it's important to have access to these slides and handouts so that you can receive the most benefit from the presentation today. Again, my intention is to be a support and a resource to you. As we're dealing with stress, it's important to note that there are external forces of stress. These are outside forces that we have little control over that impact our lives and can cause stress in them. One of them is our workplace responsibilities. Another is our dependent care responsibilities, our parent responsibilities, which now may include homeschooling, as well as household responsibilities and managing unexpected events such as COVID-19. All of this can really exacerbate our stress and decrease our functioning, making it even more important to practice good self-care. We also have internal sources of stress, and these are the things that we can control. We're all human beings and none of us is perfect, and I'm a big believer in destigmatizing mental health issues. I think we all deal with them at different points in our lives, whether it's depression or stress, anxiety, relationship conflict, or grief and loss. We deal with them as part of the human condition, and help is available and effective. So ways that we contribute to our own stress is by having unrealistic expectations, especially about this virus. So if we set dates in our mind of when we imagine that things will return to normal, we may end up finding ourselves disappointed. We also really want to pay attention to our self-talk, to our thoughts and our feelings, our belief systems, and our attitudes. And I'll share more with you how we can improve them. We all also have self-sabotaging behaviors, and that can increase our stress, or poor self-care habits. These are all of the things that we're going to work on today to help you manage this time as best as possible. Some signs and symptoms of stress that you might notice within yourself. Some of them are physical. So if you're noticing insomnia is a big one right now, or difficulty sleeping, or maybe you're having more headaches or gastrointestinal problems, or maybe you're finding some changes in your appetite. Maybe you're not feeling hungry and you're not eating too much, or maybe you're like me and you are worried about gaining the quarantine 15. Those might be some physical signs of stress. Emotional signs of stress might be irritability or low mood or nervousness or anxiety. And emotional symptoms to stress are completely normal and understandable, but it's important for us to be self-aware and recognize when we might be experiencing them. We might also be having cognitive symptoms. I know I've been experiencing these, just feeling kind of overwhelmed, a little confused, a little bit difficulty making decisions or thinking clearly, or at times being productive. Those are also normal responses to stress. Socially, we're experiencing enormous change. We're not able to see our loved ones and our friends and access our support systems in the way that we normally would. And this can cause some social responses to stress, including isolation. Maybe you're not returning text messages or emails, or not setting up FaceTime phone calls to connect with loved ones, because maybe you're feeling a little bit down or disconnected during this time. That's really common and something I'm seeing often in my practice. Financial symptoms of stress. My goodness, with the way the economy has been impacted by this virus, so many people are dealing with unemployment, or the threat of unemployment, or decreased work, and fear and concern about their finances. And that's completely understandable, but it can really exacerbate anxiety that you might be experiencing at this time. So right now I want to talk about the difference between stress and burnout. Stress is really the mind and body's response to these types of stressors or anything that we're experiencing as overwhelming. While burnout is a more chronic and more severe state of chronic stress that includes emotional and physical exhaustion. And if you're a caretaker, you may be at higher risk for experiencing burnout. So I think it's really important to know what some of the signs and symptoms of burnout are. If you're feeling really kind of negative, feeling despair, feeling apathy, like you're not finding joy in the things that you normally enjoy doing, or you're experiencing concentration problems or irritability, frustration, these may be signs that you're burnt out, which is why it's so important that you are watching this presentation today and making a commitment to taking care of yourself, because it's kind of like the oxygen mask analogy on an airplane. In the event of an emergency, you really want to secure your own oxygen mask before assisting others. And to me, when I first heard that, it sounded almost a little selfish and counterintuitive. But really, if we don't take care of ourselves first, we're going to become exhausted and depleted and resentful. So we really need to fill our own cup so that we're able to take care of our loved ones. So some of the stressors that people are experiencing with the COVID-19 virus is some fear and anxiety about our own health and the health of our loved ones, especially if you yourself are an essential worker or you live with an essential worker. These fears and concerns may be even higher. Adjusting to working from home. Some of you may be used to working from home, but many of us have had to transition to having home offices, and perhaps our spaces aren't set up for that. We may have new demands with homeschooling. We may have challenges on dealing with all this uncertainty and change, which is always stressful for people. Something I'm seeing a lot in my practice is relationship conflict, because we're all having a lot of togetherness as we're sheltering in place, and everybody is under stress, and we're not getting the same support that we normally do. And so conflict is coming up, and that is normal and understandable. And I'm going to give you some tools and techniques to help deal with that to the best of your ability. Some people are dealing with loneliness and isolation. Maybe you live alone, or you live alone with the person who you're taking care of, and you're not able to access your friends and family and the people who are supportive to you in your usual life. And that can be extremely stressful. Other stressors include grief and loss. There was a really great article in the Harvard Business Review that said that uncomfortable feeling that we're all feeling at this time is grief. And really, we're experiencing the grief of our usual daily lives and freedoms, and perhaps some events that were planned, some important events like weddings or celebrations like prom or graduation or birthdays or anniversaries or a vacation that you had planned. And those are all losses. On a much more serious level, some people have lost loved ones to the virus. And others may have lost loved ones and not been able to attend their funerals or grieve in the way that they normally could, which is understandably very difficult, hard to even imagine what that might be like. Again, distortions in time. I think every day is kind of feeling like Groundhog Day, and we don't have the same systems in place that keep us on our routine and keep us structured. And this can be confusing and make it feel like time has no meaning anymore. So it's really important for us to get those systems set up. We may be seeing an increase in stress, anxiety, depression, or in substance abuse. Sometimes people self-medicate their symptoms of depression or anxiety or overwhelm by having, extra drinks or other substances. And you want to make sure that your self-care is healthy and that it's not self-harm disguised as self-care. Now we're moving on to the tools to help you all. And one of my favorite practices that I share with my clients in therapy is mindfulness. And mindfulness is rooted in ancient Buddhism, in Zen Buddhism. It's not a new idea. It's something that across many cultures and thousands of years, people have found to be really helpful in reducing stress. Jon Kabat-Zinn is the founding father of modern mindfulness, and he created something called mindfulness-based stress reduction. And we're going to talk about many of those tips today. But if you're interested in reading more, I would recommend checking out some of Jon Kabat-Zinn's books or his videos and podcasts that are available through his website. Mindfulness is really connecting with the here and now. And the easiest way to do that is to connect with our breath. Across hundreds of cultures and thousands of years, they've said they believe that the breath is what ties together the mind, the body, and the spirit. So by connecting with our breath, we can calm our minds and calm our bodies and become rooted in the present moment. We can also stop the busyness. I think we all deal with the disease of being busy in our culture. And by connecting with our breath and taking pause, we can become more aware. And we can become more aware of the senses that we're experiencing in our body. We can practice mindfulness anytime, anywhere. It's absolutely free. So that's one of the things that I absolutely love about it. These are some of the benefits of mindfulness. Some of them are cognitive, increasing our attention, our decision-making skills. They can also improve our creativity and our cognitive flexibility. They can even improve our relationships and our job performance and reduce chronic pain, reduce high blood pressure. It's really good for our health. It can boost our immune system as well. Mindfulness can also decrease stress, anxiety, depression, and irritability. How awesome is that? It can also improve our emotional intelligence. We're going to talk more about that, but our emotional intelligence is basically how we manage our own emotions and recognize the emotions of others and skillfully manage the relationships. And that's something we can all practice and develop. Mindfulness improves sleep. I think many of the things we're going to talk about today will really help you if you're having difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. And mindfulness can actually be applied to your financial life so that you are mindfully aware when you're making spending decisions or financial decisions. So it's just pretty amazing how helpful this tool can be. Eckhart Tolle is one of my favorite authors. He is a best-selling author of The Power of Now and A New Earth, and he's a mindfulness expert. I really like this quote from him. And I would say after 20 years of providing individual, couples, and family therapy, I would say that this is very true. That a lot of times we're all focused on the externals in our lives. We're focused on our jobs and our relationships and our finances. But really, if we take time to look within ourselves, we can improve our self-care, improve our relationship with ourselves, and our outside life will begin to reflect that. So some things about mindfulness is basically, I've seen in my practice, we all spend a lot of time either kind of second-guessing the past, ruminating about the past, or worrying about the future, when peace can really be found in the present moment. I was speaking with one of my clients about mindfulness and practices like deep breathing and progressive muscle relaxation and meditation, which is really like a mind, body, spirit reboot, and yoga, which is really meditation with movement. So we were talking about Eckhart Tolle and mindfulness, and he canceled his next session. I didn't hear from him for 6 weeks, and I was pretty concerned. He had been dealing with some ruminating anxiety, and I thought mindfulness would really help him. When he did come back to session, he said, "Joyce, it was that session that got me through the last 6 weeks." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I left your office and I went to my doctor's and I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer." Oh my goodness. So he said his mind went to immediately catastrophic, worst case scenario thinking about his own mortality and his wife and children and business. And he said, "I am going to remember what Joyce said, and I'm not just going to take it one day at a time. I'm going to take it one moment at a time." And so he realized he actually felt pretty good in that moment. He felt healthy. He felt just the same as he did 10 minutes before getting that diagnosis. So he really decided to practice mindfulness regularly. He said he laid in the MRI machine, and instead of worrying about the prognosis, he listened to the music that was playing, which was Madonna's Vogue. Can you believe that? So he just said that he struck a pose and kind of went with the flow. And I'm so happy to report to you that 6 years later, he is still in remission and has a daily meditation practice. And he left me with the most beautiful analogy for mindfulness that I'd like to share with you. He said, "Joyce, it's as if in life, when we're born, we each get a record album, and the needle sets on the record and it begins to play. And if our minds second guess the past or worry about the future, we scratch up our record and there is no music." He said the present moment is the only place that we can hear our song. Isn't that beautiful? And we can do that every day. And we can become aware when our minds take us to the past or the future. We can connect with the breath and the present moment, and we can feel better. And now especially, it's a time to just take it one day at a time. So breathing, I mentioned, is one of the most simple ways to connect with mindful awareness. And I'm sharing with you what I think is the easiest and most effective breathing technique, which is called square breathing. So if you look at this diagram, at the bottom left corner of the square, it says to exhale out all the air that's in your lungs. And then you'll breathe in to 4 counts as you move up the square. And then hold your breath for 4 counts as you go across the top. And then exhale as you go down the other side of the square. And then hold as you move across the bottom of the square. And you repeat this. And I like to even trace the square, look at it, because then it's a meditation. Your mind is busy concentrating on your breathing and your square, and you relax your mind and your body and you feel better. I do this when I ride airplanes because I get a little nervous on airplanes, and I find it super helpful. You can share it with your kids as well. I love the work of Maya Angelou. She has so many beautiful quotes. And this one I think is really great for right now. She says, if you don't like something, change it. And if you can't change it, change your attitude. So we can't change the coronavirus, but we can change our attitude about how we're responding to it. Whenever a client of mine is dealing with a challenge, I always encourage them to focus on what they can control and try to let go of the rest. It's really the wisdom of the serenity prayer, which I'm not saying in a religious sense, but I think there's a lot of wisdom to it. So it's basically, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So the things that we do have control over are our own thoughts, our own emotions, our own behaviors, and our own choices. However, what we don't have control over is other people's thoughts, other people's emotions, other people's behaviors and choices, and other things like COVID-19. So we really want to empower ourselves to change our thinking and to change our behaviors. And we're going to talk more about that. Again, one way to do this is through these mindfulness practices, and I have a list of them for you. Unplugging from technology is so important. I was reading last week that the national average for streaming videos has moved from 4 hours a day, which is really already, that was a lot, to now it's 8 hours a day on average while dealing with COVID-19. So too much screen time can really not be good for our health and wellness. So making sure that you're taking time to unplug from technology and practicing other hobbies like creating art or gardening or baking or reading a good book or taking a bubble bath or anything else that really fills your cup. A mindfulness practice that's really easy is just connecting to your senses and noticing what you're seeing, what you're feeling and smelling. I like active meditations, and one is to do a walking meditation. So it's simply to go outside and as you're walking, connect with your senses and notice maybe the feeling of the sun on your face, the breeze on your skin. Notice what you're smelling. Really take in the sights that you're seeing, and even feel your feet on the ground as you move. This connection to your body is mindful awareness, and it helps us reduce that mind chatter and that stress, the stressful thinking that can exacerbate our anxiety and overwhelm. Connecting to nature is always helpful because nature is always mindful. And I'm a believer in having a positive mantra. So right now, it might be, I'm a human being and I'm doing the best that I can. We will get through this together. Anything that is going to help you move through this time. Positivity. Gandhi said, "A man is but the products of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes." And do you know that this has been proven by research? So cognitive behavioral therapy is a highly supported, empirically supported approach to therapy. And the belief is that our thoughts precede our emotions and our behaviors. So if we want to feel better or we want to stop self-destructive behaviors, we need to pay attention to our self-talk. And we all have that inner critic in our minds. The voice in our head that speaks to ourselves like we would not talk to anybody else. So that voice that's kind of critical and hard on yourself, I have named my inner critic Zelda. And I find it really helpful to just kind of think of her as this person that is not super helpful to me. I was telling a journalist for Bustle that I found that naming my inner critic is a mindfulness practice that helps me become aware of my negative thinking. And she told me she thought that was kind of absurd, but kind of interesting. And so she gave it a try, and she named her negative thoughts Terry for a week and said it was really helpful. And she wrote a really clever article. If you want to check it out, you can Google my name, Joyce Marter, Bustle, and Terry, and it'll come up. And I think it's really cute. We also want to avoid catastrophic thinking. So if you catch yourself worrying about worst case scenarios related to this COVID-19 situation, you are causing yourself more stress. So you want to really be your own loving parent, your own best friend, your own compassionate advocate as you positively coach yourself through this challenging time. And I really am a firm believer in the practice of positive affirmation. I love Louise Hay, and Hay House has a lot of great positive affirmations if you want to follow them on Instagram. I try to post a lot of them as well, and I'll share my information at the end of the presentation. Gratitude is a wonderful way to shift our thinking from the negative to the positive. I have 2 teenage girls, and when my older daughter Celeste was about 9, I became concerned because I noticed that she started to develop some glass half empty attitudes, some negative thinking, and I know that can cause depression. So I bought her a cognitive behavioral therapy workbook for kids called No More Stinking Thinking. And it basically teaches you to look at the good part in any situation. And this really does improve our mood and improve our perspective and outlook. So some people keep a gratitude journal, or maybe in their morning or evening reflections or prayers, they reflect on what they're grateful for. I have been awed and amazed by the gratitude that I've seen in my clients. I had one client come in after a horrible car accident, and his neck was in a halo ring traction. It looked like it was screwed into his head. It looked extremely painful. It was a very bad car accident. And the first thing that he said to me was, "I am so grateful." And I was blown away. That's pretty incredible. He was grateful for his life rather than the pain that he was in, or he wasn't focusing on that. He wasn't focusing on the losses. He was focusing on the positive, even during a challenging hardship like that. And we can do that now as well. Something that I've learned in my own journey as a therapist and as I've continued to work on myself is the importance of detachment. I think sometimes detachment is not understood, and people think it means that you're disconnected, that you don't care, that you're somehow aloof. But really, detachment is a mindfulness practice where you can separate yourself a bit from your own emotions and the emotions of others with mindful awareness. My own therapist is Arlene Englander. I think we all need therapy at different points in our lives. I think it's something healthy and proactive and normal and should be a routine form of healthcare, like going to the dentist or the doctor. Doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean you're in crisis. We can all use somebody to help us change our thinking and our behaviors to live a greater life. But Arlene said to me, our feelings are like waves of energy, which we can either choose to surf or we can let them overcome us. And so I found that really to be true, and it's something that takes practice. But when you meditate or you start to practice mindfulness, you start to be able to observe your thoughts and your feelings rather than being immediately reactive to them. So it's like zooming out in time and space and seeing yourself in the situation from a much greater lens. And that gives you perspective. Mindful detachment can also shield you from the negative emotions of others. I like to imagine that there's plexiglass sometimes between me and somebody who's experiencing a lot of negativity, so that their stuff just kind of bounces off of that shield. I can still be empathic and care and connected to them, but I'm not absorbing their negativity. My friend Ross Rosenberg, who is a therapist here in Chicago, has an expression. He says, observe, don't absorb. So if you have a partner or somebody you're taking care of, or kids that you're dealing with and they're being negative in some way, you can use detachment as a shield of protection. You also want to detach from expectations or outcome, because when we attach our happiness to something in the future that may or may not happen, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. So if you're saying to yourself, well, everything's going to return to normal in X amount of weeks, and that doesn't happen, it's really going to make you feel worse. So I recommend kind of recalibrating your expectations to zero and focusing on each day, one day at a time. Some detachment strategies involve, we talked about the protective barrier and zooming out. You can also imagine that you're observing whatever you're going through from a movie screen, that you're safely seated in the audience and you're watching the situation on a movie screen. I know that sounds kind of strange, but it gives you some distance. You can know that you are well, you are fine, even if you're dealing with a challenging situation. This really takes some practice. And detachment is so helpful in conflict resolution, which again, I think a lot of people who are sheltering in place are having more conflict these days. And detachment means not locking horns and kind of letting go of your end of the rope in a tug of war argument. You can't have conflict if you let go. And you can take care of yourself by doing the next right thing. So if you are dealing with somebody who is really escalated, really upset, or maybe you are, again, none of us is perfect, you want to detach, pause, regroup, take care of yourself, maybe go take a shower, maybe lay down for a few minutes, maybe say to the person, you know what, I'm not in a good space right now. I can see we're both upset. I'm going to take a few minutes to take care of myself, and why don't we talk about this again tomorrow morning when we're both refreshed? I think that empathy is like a magic wand in relationships. It's really powerful. If you can reflect to somebody else that you understand how they feel, it can really diffuse conflict. So whenever we minimize other people's feelings or we tell them not to feel how they're feeling, like don't be stressed, don't be scared, don't be mad. How does that usually go? It doesn't usually go very well. It's much, much more effective to be empathic and recognize that you are understanding how they feel. Even if you disagree with it, you can say, I understand that you are really scared of getting this virus. I understand that you're worried about your finances. Absolutely. And reflect care and kindness to them. You also want to give people some space and time. You know, I think we're all maybe not at our best right now because we're all under stress. So try to work at letting some things go and giving others some time and space to kind of regroup. So emotional intelligence, I mentioned, is being aware of your own emotions and managing them to the best of your ability. And again, we're not perfect, and this is something that we all need to kind of work on as we continue to grow and develop. But we should motivate ourselves, because when we can manage our emotions better, we can feel better and we can improve our relationships. So using that empathy and compassion to understand other people, and then using kind and compassionate and assertive communication with others that really reflects respect for yourself and for them, can improve emotional intelligence and improve your relationships. So these are some of the symptoms or signs of high emotional intelligence. When you are self-aware and you take responsibility for yourself, if you behaved poorly, maybe you were cranky, woke up on the wrong side of the bed, said something hurtful, apologize and make amends. This can really smooth out and prevent conflict. You know, being respectful, being assertive, being open to others and non-defensive can really smooth things over at this time. So when we're in conflict, we are biologically primed to respond to stressors with either a fight, flight, or freeze response. So somebody makes us upset, we're ready to fight. Or maybe we just run away and we go away from the situation. Or maybe we freeze up and just avoid dealing with it. And none of those responses are really optimal. We want to figure out how to take care of ourselves so that we can respond in a way that is more productive and actually have conversations and come to some resolution. Again, not locking horns with others and kind of zooming out. Sometimes when we're upset, we think whatever we're upset about is like the biggest deal ever. And if we can take a step back and zoom out, we can maybe realize that it's not so big of a deal after all. So being rooted in the present moment is going to help you deal with conflict better, not being defensive, taking responsibility for yourself, and practicing some flexibility and adaptability and compromise. You know, so making sure that you are being equitable in your relationships and mutual and being giving of yourself can go a long, long way. Part of mindfulness is choosing a growth mindset. So chalking up any mistakes or failures or challenges as opportunities for learning and growth. And sometimes what I've seen in my practice with my clients is people who have gone through very difficult things like brain injury and taking care of a loved one, or recovery from addiction or other traumas. it often carves deep wisdom into their being, and there are blessings that come with that. And I think even with this COVID-19 situation, that there are some blessings that come through that. I think it's important for us to realize in life that sometimes people expect when they're working on themselves, like in therapy or coaching or something like that. If you look at the little diagram that I made for you, people expect progress to be linear often, that they're going to keep working on themselves and they're going to keep making progress until they're functioning great and feeling great. And really, life isn't like that. We kind of make progress and then we hit a challenge, like maybe a breakup or a job loss or a depression or a relapse, or maybe something like COVID-19. And we have some setbacks, and that's normal. It's part of the human condition, but it's how we choose to recover and continue to move forward that really makes the difference between succeeding or really experiencing more challenges. So I really recommend having a daily mindfulness practice, even if it's just a few minutes. So taking some time to connect with your breath. There are apps like Calm and Headspace that have guided breathing and guided meditations for you, and they will remind you to meditate. And right now, both of them are offering 3 30-day trials. So definitely check that out. Resilience. So building resilience is something that we need at this time. And this was the chart that I was just mentioning. I apologize that it must have been on the wrong slide there. So progress is linear, and then in reality, we have these loops that we go through. And again, those challenges really can promote consciousness in our lives. So building resilience is our ability to move through and bounce back when we have challenges. I mentioned earlier the practice of yoga as being a mindfulness practice, and I started practicing yoga about 8 years ago. Honestly, for many years I didn't, because I thought, I was intimidated. I thought, maybe I'll do that if I lose weight or get in better shape. And I'm so glad that I got over myself and started to practice, because I found it to be amazingly helpful for stress reduction and for building resilience. It was interesting, one time a naval officer walked into the yoga studio where I practice, and he said, we do yoga in the military, but we don't call it yoga. And we said, what do you call it then? And he said, we call it resilience training. And I thought that was so interesting, because I found that to be true as well, that if you kind of breathe through an uncomfortable pose or position, knowing it'll pass, in the end, you're going to end up more balanced, more strong, and more flexible and more resilient. So right now, they're offering so many free yoga classes on YouTube, and I recommend you checking them out. This pose here, some of you may know, is crow pose, which is a really challenging forward arm support pose that it requires a lot of strength and a lot of balance. And for many years, if that pose came up in a class, I would say, I can't do crow pose. And then it occurred to me, I wonder if I'm setting my own ceilings. Maybe Zelda, my inner critic, is telling me I can't do this, and I'm not giving myself the chance to fail, which really helps us grow and eventually succeed. So I tried it one arm at a time, balancing on each arm, and then just kind of faking it, leaning forward and keeping my feet on the floor. And then I tried it, and I face planted 100 times. But eventually I did it. I was so excited. I finally did it. And now that picture was taken very quickly, but I did it. So the point being, we fall, we have challenges, but if you get back up, you can continue to be resilient and move forward. Self-love is one of the most important things, I think, in order to manage stress. And self-love is not selfish. Again, it is filling your own cup so that you have more to take care of others. So right now, I really encourage you to practice self-care and prioritize your well-being and set healthy limits and boundaries in your relationship. So really carve out self-care. I tell my family, okay, I'm taking 2 hours for myself this evening. I try to do that at least once a week. I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to read a book, maybe watch a show by myself in the bedroom. And that's some time that I've set aside for self-care. But we really need to do something every day. This is a handout that's on the Text Campaign landing page. And this is an innovative tool that I've created for self-care that's going to be in my book that's being published next year by Sounds True Publishing. They're the publisher for Brené Brown and Eckhart Tolle and some of my favorite authors. And this is a self-love wheel. Each spoke of the wheel, it may be difficult for you to read here, but you can see it on the website. It prints out as a handout. Is a different aspect of self-love. So it might be your nutrition, your exercise. Are you drinking water? Are you practicing self-compassion? Are you practicing self-forgiveness? Are you unplugging from technology? Are you connecting with nature? All the things that we've talked about today. And as you complete this exercise, you would put a black dot or a mark on each spoke according to how you're doing. So if you're doing really well, you would put the mark toward the outside of the wheel. And if you are doing less well, it would go toward the inside of the wheel. When you're finished rating yourself on all of the spokes, you would connect your dots with a line, and it'll show you what your wheel looks like. It's really normal for it to look a little bit more like a constellation than a wheel. So you might have some dents in your wheel. And this exercise is going to show you where you can direct some attention to improve your self-love. I believe another aspect of stress management is accessing support. And we talked about now we might not be getting the same support that we normally do. So it's really important to connect with our loved ones online. So making sure that we're FaceTiming, that we're seeing people over video conference, that we're attending in support groups online and participating in online communities, even like this presentation today. I really want to encourage you to consider teletherapy. So teletherapy is therapy over video conferencing or even over the phone. And because of COVID-19, all insurance companies, I believe, virtually all of them, are reimbursing for teletherapy. And some of them, like Aetna, have even waived their copay. So if you want to talk to a professional like myself and receive some support and tips and advice, it's a great thing to do for yourself. I'll share some more information about that in just a bit. The worst thing to do is kind of to isolate just with your own feelings. We really need to reach out for support. This is a support wheel that I've created as well that can help you kind of assess and nurture your support network, which I really think is like a garden. And I think we don't always pay attention to who's in our support network. So we need to plant seeds to make new relationships so that we have a nice full support network. And we need to nurture the relationships we have. We need to make sure that we're reaching out to people, that we're talking with them, that we're connecting with them. And yes, sometimes we do need to even weed out toxic relationships and let go of them. I had a friend once that I noticed every time I got together with her, I had to take Advil because she would just sort of vent to me and there wasn't really space for mutual sharing or connection in our relationship. So I made a difficult decision to shift my boundaries in that relationship so that I could let more supportive people in my life. This is what a completed support wheel looks like. It shows where this person who's in each area of support in their life. If you don't have a significant other, don't want a significant other, you can cross that part out. Or maybe you're dating a couple different people and you could list their names there and kind of assess how you're doing in that area. But really, again, to identify if there's some areas that you need more support. And support goes both ways. We receive it and we also give it. And I know as caretakers, you give a lot of support. So I know I'm preaching to the choir. But make sure you're asking people what they need instead of assuming you know what they need. maybe consider their love language. I like the work of Gary Chapman, who wrote the 5 love languages. And he said basically that we all have 5 different ways of either preferring to receive or to demonstrate love. And those 5 ways, those 5 languages are through gifts, through acts of service, through words of affirmation, or quality time together, and I'm completely blanking out. Oh, physical affection is the other one. So you want to make sure that you are demonstrating love in the way that that person really speaks that language, that they receive love in that way. So I am a words of affirmation person, but my husband is not. So I can give him 1,000 compliments and it doesn't mean as much as if I give him a back massage or make him a nice meal, because he's an active service person. So this is a time certainly to just turn up the volume on our patience and respect for others, and to really provide encouragement and appreciation for others, because we're all under stress, I know. So remember, this is temporary. This will pass. We will get through this together. This is a mantra to use right now if you're finding yourself getting down at any point. These are some resources for you. If you go to the landing page and you click on the slides, these are links. So if you put the cursor over each of these, it'll take you to the website. If you don't do that, you could just copy these titles and you could put them into Google and find them yourself. But if you or a loved one are dealing with anxiety about the coronavirus, that toolkit is amazing. NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, has some great resources. There's also Mental Health Awareness has some stress and coping resources, so definitely check those out. And if you're interested in teletherapy or would like to give counseling a try, if you have insurance, you could use Psychology Today. So at psychologytoday.com, it's basically like match.com to find a therapist. There's their photos, where they practice, what insurance they take, what their areas of expertise are, and how many years they've been practicing. And you can contact them. Many offer a free consultation. And again, it is covered through insurance according to mental health parity law. And also there's a text campaign. If you text HOME to 741-741, you can speak with a crisis counselor for free. And United Healthcare has generously set up a call, a 1-866 number, a toll-free number, where you can speak with a licensed mental health professional 24/7 at absolutely no cost. So help is available. Here are some meditation resources. If you're open to giving that a try, I really encourage you to do that. And here again is the text campaign. If you would like to text keys to 33777 and receive all of the resources for today, that would be fantastic. I want to thank you so much for your attention today, and thank you again to the Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona. This is my information. Feel free to email me if you have a question, or I could provide you with any support or resources. I do try to post inspirational content on Pinterest and Instagram, so if you'd like to follow me there, I would love to see you there. Thank you so much, and I wish you all well, and we're going to get through this together. Thank you.